But you know, the courts have always said, when you bring these things to them, well, you've really got to present us some fraudulent ballots. One of the Pennsylvania judges said, the Trump legal defense team did not present us one example of a legal ballot. And the reason is because they don't have access to the ballots. You can't get access to the ballots until you get the courts to agree to let the suit proceed and to rule that discovery can proceed, which they didn't do. So the judges are really playing foul with this. But I'll have to say that it's unfortunate that Donald Trump's legal team is run by Rudy Giuliani, who is deep state. Rudy Giuliani was integrally involved in the cover-up and during the 9/11 catastrophe in the World Trade Center. He knew that his building, number 7, was going to be pulled, meaning exploded. He got all of his people out, but he failed to alert the firefighters in the World Trade Center. And they, the ones who know about that, which is the majority of firefighters retired from New York City, hate Rudy Giuliani because they know he betrayed them. He knew that it was coming down, and he didn't warn them. So I'm here to tell you, whatever gets to the Supreme Court, I'll say there's a 99% chance they're going to dismiss it, that we're not going to win in the courts. Now, there are several people within the conservative community, some are legitimate and some I have questions about, who have been telling you in the internet, and I get a lot of emails from people, they're telling you that Trump is going to win big and that it's just going to be a slam dunk. He's going to be the next president of the United States. Let me go through some of those. One of them is General Michael Flynn, who's a really good guy. And he teamed up with Tom McInerney, who retired in 1997. And he gave a very optimistic interview, which I think some of you have seen on the internet. Here's what Flynn said. If we don't correct in the next couple of weeks what is happening, then I hate to think of what is going to become of this country. That's absolutely right. I do not believe for a second that the country will accept VP Biden as the next president of this country based on what we know is the greatest fraud in this country that is experienced in our history. Well, I have a lot of doubts. In fact, most of the country has already accepted him as the president-elect, haven't they? Most people you talk to, oh yeah, Biden's going to be the president. So it's absolutely untrue that these people are not going to accept this. I don't know what planet he lives on, but he's living in conservative circles. If you think that everybody's not going to accept this, we're not going to accept it in this room, but we're a very, very small percentage. Then he says, first of all, the president has clear paths to victory that actually don't require a lot of court action. Really? What they require is a lot of honesty from elected officials. Really? I mean, even here in Utah, look at the Provo City Council and their mask mandate. Look at every one of these people. They're yes men to the medical authorities on COVID. They're yes men to the media. And why are they yes men? Because they don't have the courage to buck the establishment. Every person who's elected in this community knows you've got to be mainstream or you get crucified in the press. And because they know they have to be mainstream, they're afraid to buck the mainstream. I happen to know, because I'm friends with Kate Daly, who runs a very excellent radio station out of St. George. She's good friends with the oldest son of Governor Herbert, and he's a strong conservative. He knows all the facts about the election fraud and COVID and everything. He's been feeding it to his father. And his father rejects everything. Not interested, not interested. Won't look at it. Well, who do you listen to, Dad? I listen to Dr. Dunn. I listen to others, all the mainstream people, because Gary Herbert is a mainstream hack. He is afraid of his own skin to say anything against the mainstream. And that's the problem here. So, and one thing I told Kate, I said, well, one thing for sure, when he gets up on the other side, he's not going to be able to say, I didn't know. The Lord's going to turn to him and say, Nathan, your son, come forward. What did you tell him? You can't say you didn't know. These people will be held accountable someday. Then General Flynn said, Trump is going to win Pennsylvania, he's going to win Arizona, he's going to win Georgia, he's going to win in Nevada, he's going to win Michigan, he's going to win Wisconsin. It's not going to happen. Then it was McInerney's turn. Now, these are sincere people. These are not just playing games. These are just naive, sincere people, and they may be listening to Q, which is a problem. General McInerney was called on President Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act, suspend habeas corpus, declare martial law, and initiate mass arrests under military authority. Now, I was on KTAC on Friday and with Tom Drashel, who's a great patriot. He said, that's really what we need to do, Joel. We need to actually, I'm for that. I said, wait a minute, Tom. You can't do that in the first place. Who do you arrest? Where are the names of the people that initiated this fraud? We don't know any of the names. We know the fraud occurred. You can look at the videotape. We don't even know the name of the lady in the blonde braids who initiated that fraud in Georgia. Now, you can find that out, but you can't find out the people who put her up to it. But I'll tell you, when you insert ballots in the dead of night, and every one of these swing states shut down their voting at 10 to 11 o'clock at night so that they could bring in these secret ballots, and there are videotapes of them driving up in a private car and bringing out a box of ballots, going in a door with no security badge, no security guard at the door, taking ballots into these in Detroit and other places. There were some 76,000 ballots were wheeled in on a cart in an unmarked car, in an unmarked truck in Wisconsin. We don't know the names of those people. We don't know who put them up to it. You have to have discovery. You have to have the court's authority to go in and start to really drill down on that, and the courts aren't doing that because of the weakness of Giuliani's case. But Tom McInerney says, suspend habeas corpus. You know what habeas corpus is? It's the constitutional law. It says bring forth the prisoner. You can't take people into prison, lock them away. With habeas corpus, you say bring him forth and show cause, government, why you're holding him. Suspend habeas corpus? That's an invitation to tyranny. That's just darn right stupid. Declare martial law. People don't really understand what martial law is. Martial law is where the government controls every bit of transportation. You have curfews. You can't go to your work. You can't get out of your driveway. It takes hundreds of thousands of military and police to run martial law. You don't want to do that. It shuts down the economy. But we don't know who ordered these operations. Now, the last piece I'll mention, and I believe is not a sincere source. This is Dr. Steve Pieczenik, who's on Alex Jones all the time. He's long claimed insider status. He's a psychologist that worked with a lot of dark stuff within the CIA. I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. In my belief, I'm not saying I know this for sure, but he was on Alex Jones this week claiming that this old story about Trump running a sting operation. How many of you heard that? Trump's got them good to rights because there's watermarks on these ballots. The feds provide all the ballots, and unknown to these people, we can prove that these ballots are not legitimate. Not true. I checked. There's only about 4 or 5 states that use watermarks, and they create their own ballot paper. It's not by the federal government. In Utah alone, there's not a single printer. There's about 25 different printers of ballots in the state of Utah. You just can't control that. There's no way to do a sting operation with that kind of decentralization. But he's still claiming that. And then he said the New York Times and the Washington Post are going under. Well, they aren't going under. These are the 2 major propaganda pieces of national news. And the Post, for example, is backed by the fortune of Jeff Bezos of Amazon. He's not going under. Pieczenik said that over 700 people were arrested in Florida over a pedophilia charge, but I couldn't find a single reference in Florida through the internet about any arrest for pedophilia. Deep state pedophiles have secret immunity unless they get too public with their sins. Pieczenik said the military has been deployed all over the United States, and I guarantee you that Biden will not become president of the United States. Alex doesn't want to criticize guests when they're on, but boy, he was rolling his eyes when he said that. Because what Pieczenik has said was that the military has been deployed. They're about to make all these arrests. They're about to, enforce this. This is just ridiculous. The military wouldn't even follow Trump's orders to draw down troops in Afghanistan. They just flat out told him no. And they lied to him when he wanted to pull out in Syria. They just told him, well, there aren't any troops there, or they told him there weren't as many there were. They're just lying to him. They're not going to respond to the president. Anyway, at this point, Pachenik even said Biden is wearing an ankle bracelet tracking him. And what was the reason for this? Because Biden said he had twisted his ankle. He has to be wearing an ankle bracelet. That was just an excuse. Just incredible. And finally, Alex said, that sounds like Q stuff. Now, a little bit about Q. There are millions of Trump followers who believe in the hopeful things about Trump draining the swamp. He made predictions in 2018, in November, about 35,000 people were going to be arrested in the deep state and they're going to be shipped to Guantanamo. It never happened. In fact, nothing has happened that Q has ever said. Conservatives are never cryptic. They believe in being straight shooters, telling you what is. Q doesn't say anything except cryptic hints about this. And everybody says, ooh, this is really cool. He's trying to keep the deep state from finding him. Listen, there isn't anybody who claims to be an insider talking to the world monthly or weekly like Q does who can't be discovered by the NSA. Doesn't happen. But every single hypester on the internet, who I believe are hypesters, whether it's David Ikes or even Mike Adams become a hypester, and the Common Sense Show host, Dave Hodges. You know, it's incredible. These people all claim to have insider sources. Even Alex claims to have insider sources. But you can't be an insider source and talk to Alex Jones without the NSA knowing about it. And if they allow it to continue, what does that mean? It's disinformation. And what it isn't that it's totally false. It's just it is too good to be true. And that's what everything about Q is. You want to believe that Trump's going to drain the swamp. You want to believe that the military is going to have a coup and do this, but it's not true. Look, I've been in the military. I can tell you there's no general officers that aren't vetted very carefully through the National War College system, which are all taught by globalists, most of them from Georgetown University. They talk about globalism, they laud globalism, they talk about all the wonderful things we're doing. You don't get promoted to a general officer, admiral or general, unless you say yes to all those war college classes and things. You don't even get past colonel into those, the selection board if you get known as someone who doesn't approve of this stuff. So there's not going to be any military coup. In fact, it's very rare that the military will do what President Trump wants. But there are millions of fanatical followers of Q, and I know because they email me all the time saying, you're wrong, Joel, you're wrong, because Q is going to say that Donald Trump is going to do this. And I say, well, give me the evidence. Name me one thing that Q has said that's come true. A lot of promises, but nothing there. So it's really unfortunate, but this is the problem that we're dealing with, is that Donald Trump is highly manipulable because he doesn't have the background to fight these things. You know, he did some wonderful things. He said we should stop birthright citizenship. The only president in the world that would have had the courage to say, let's stop birthright citizenship. There's no reason except to build the population of illegal aliens to drop babies in the United States and call them citizens. But as soon as Paul Ryan and other Rhino Republicans gave him some pushback, no, we can't do that, he gave up because he didn't have the legal arguments. See, that's the problem. He's got good instincts. He feels what's right. But then when they get pushback, he doesn't have the arguments. He doesn't have the legal wherewithal to back it up. And that's why Trump continues to fail. Now, we have a new time coming up. It's a time when we're going to be under threat from Joe Biden and his new administration under Kamala Harris, who's a radical leftist, who slept her way to power. It's going to be very bad, but it's not going to be as bad as fast as what people are saying. They know what happened when the Democrats passed an assault weapons ban and they got 30-some Democrats unelected to Congress the next vote. Right? So they're not going to take it as fast as you think. But they are going to ensure that we'll never win another election again. If they control the Senate, and that's one of the reasons why there was so much election fraud in Georgia, it wasn't just to get President Trump unelected, it was to stop these two Republican senators from being reelected. And they were successful in getting the vote close enough against those two senators that they still won, but not by enough margin. They're going to face a runoff on January 5th. And unfortunately, Lynn Wood, who's claiming to be another pro-Trump lawyer like Sidney Powell, who's been working with Sidney Powell, he's telling the Republicans in Georgia not to vote in that election. And Breitbart came out, I think rightfully, and condemned him for it and showed that, by the way, he's been a Democratic donor for much of his life. He may be a plant within the movement who's trying to sabotage the election, because hopefully Georgians won't listen to that, because I'll tell you, if you don't vote in the election, you're going to get those 2 Democratic senators, and the Democrats are going to control the Senate. And if they control the House, the Senate, and the presidency, it's a slam dunk for anything they want to do. And here's the 2 biggest things they want to do. Number 1, they want to create 2 new states, Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. That guarantees 4 more senators of Democrats, and that gives them a permanent majority that we can't overcome. And the next thing is they want to stack the Supreme Court and increase the number of justices so they overcome the nominal conservative majority that we have. We don't really have it because Roberts isn't a conservative.